If you're born to be a musician, you'll find a way to make it happen. The dog ate my finger is no excuse. Mr. Acker Bilk, as the gentlemanly derby hat-wearing musician was billed, is about the most unlikely person to ever top the American pop chart. When Stranger on the Shore went to number 1 in 1962, no British act had ever done it. And in the age of youthful rock and roll and cool Motown records delivered R&B, Bilk's tune was decidedly old-fashioned, a slow, melancholic instrumental jazz song dominated by Bilk's clarinet playing. Knowing Bilk, the clarinet didn't seem like the obvious choice. Playing it well, or at least correctly, involves proper teeth placement on a reed, and Bilk had his 2 front ones punched out during a childhood schoolyard fight. Not only that, the clarinet theoretically requires the use of all 10 fingers. Bilk's loose, slightly off-time style was because he didn't have all of his. He'd lost half of one in a sledding accident as a boy, and when he say lost the finger, it actually got eaten. As Bilk explained to The Independent, a whippet gulped it down. He didn't even chew it. I was chasing after the dog and I was going to say, "Look, he's keeping my finger warm. Can you open him up?" That didn't work out. In other words, whippet 1, Bilk 0. Or maybe we should say 9.5 from that day forward. Theodore Roosevelt Hound Dog Taylor was a raucous slide guitar player who made his mark in Chicago's electric blues scene back in the 1950s and 60s. He had some minor hits, but he broke onto the national scene in 1971. Taylor's late-in-life, long-awaited success came just after the guitarist went from one exclusive club to another. He started out as a member of the Musicians with Extra Body Parts Club. Taylor was born with polydactylism. He had 6 fingers on each hand. Although the extra digits didn't move, so they didn't give him an edge when it came to playing his guitar. One Sunday, after playing his regular Sunday afternoon show at Florence's Lounge in Chicago, Taylor, who'd been overserved to the extreme, abruptly brandished a razor and sawed off the extra finger on his right hand by himself. Apparently that sobered him up enough to reconsider self-amputating the left one. Rockstar? Not really, but it's a story we can't resist. Rapper Richard Shaw, aka Bushwick Bill, was born in Jamaica and raised in the Bushwick neighborhood of Brooklyn. Eventually, he resettled in Houston and joined the hip-hop crew the Ghetto Boys as a dancer in the 1980s. Together, Bushwick Bill, Scarface, and Willie D established the Houston hip-hop scene. The Ghetto Boys broke out in a big way in 1991 with the album We Can't Be Stopped, which included the group's best-known song, Mind Playing Tricks on Me. The cover of We Can't Be Stopped was built around a photo of Bushwick Bill on a hospital gurney with a bloodied eye socket. It's a real picture, captured after a dark sequence of events in Bill's life.
"We want to shoot this album cover, man. You down?" Bill was like, "I don't care."
Here's how that moment came to be. Bushwick Bill wanted to die, but he also wanted to make sure his mother would be able to collect his life insurance afterward. Heavily intoxicated, he went to a nightclub and tried to steal a cop's gun to provoke the officer into shooting him. Instead, he was kicked out, so he went home and smoked some weed he found lying around. But unbeknownst to him, the marijuana was with PCP, a powerful dissociative. Under the influence of the drug, Bill grabbed a gun and picked a fight with his girlfriend. In the chaos, the gun went off and the bullet hit Bushwick Bill in the eye. Doctors removed it at the hospital the night the Ghetto Boys took the picture. Outlaw country legend Waylon Jennings lived as fast and hard as many of his songs suggested. After years of extreme cocaine use, he stopped using the drug in 1985, but the damage had already been done.
I had gotten so bad into drugs, I was doing up to $1,500 a day, and I was staying up 5, 6, and 7 days.
Cocaine can cause serious damage to the heart, and in 1988, Jennings underwent a balloon angioplasty to clear out an arterial blockage. 2 months later, he was hospitalized with intense chest pains. Doctors found blockages in 3 arteries and performed triple bypass surgery. Afterward, Jennings quit smoking and tried to adopt a healthy diet. This wasn't easy. Cocaine is an appetite suppressant, so when he stopped using, Jennings began to overeat. In Waylon, an autobiography, Jennings admitted, "I hated the way I looked because once I started gaining weight, I couldn't stop." Years of health problems combined with rapid weight gain led to a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, which, if left untreated, can cause poor circulation leading to limb loss. And that's exactly what happened. In the 1990s, Jennings developed peripheral vascular disease in both legs. After surgery to relieve brutal leg pain, Jennings developed an infection in his foot. His body was so depleted by diabetes that he couldn't recover, and doctors had to surgically amputate. Sadly, 2 months later, Jennings died at age 64 from complications of diabetes. In November 2015, a bus carrying the popular metalcore band The Ghost Inside, along with its crew, collided with an 18-wheeler truck. The drivers of both vehicles died in the accident, but the band and crew all survived, although some just barely. Early reports listed vocalist Jonathan Vigil and guitarist Zach Johnson in critical condition. Drummer Andrew Tkaczyk was airlifted from the scene for treatment of head trauma and multiple broken bones.
We were all sleeping, so I woke up in the debris.
Tkaczyk spent the next 2 months in the hospital, from where, in January 2016, he posted an update on his recovery to Instagram, sharing, "I woke up from a 10-day coma in November to the sight of my missing leg." The accident had left his leg beyond repair, and surgeons had to amputate it. Writing about the accident, Tkaczyk added, "This is one injury among many others, such as fractures in my ribs, spine, and hip, along with some ligament tears in my rotator cuff and labrum." But Tkaczyk was determined. He promised to get back to playing the drums, and he did. The Ghost Inside returned to the stage in 2019 for its first show since the bus accident and has released 2 more studio albums to date. There aren't many musicians in the contemporary Christian music and gospel sphere as accomplished as Phil Keaggy. Both as a singer and a versatile guitarist, he's won his genre's top prize, the GMA Dove Award for Instrumental Album of the Year, 7 times, and he's got 2 Grammy Award nominations for Best Rock Gospel Album. Keaggy's guitar-playing style was necessarily informed by a physical impairment. In 1955, when he was just 4 years old, he severed the middle finger of his right hand. In a 1976 interview with Harmony magazine, Keaggy explained, "We lived on a farm in Hubbard, Ohio, which had a big water pump, and I was climbing up on it. As I was kneeling on top of the platform, it broke and the faucets came crashing down on my finger and cut it off. They tried to sew it on, but it didn't take, so I grew up with 9 fingers." Emerging in the early 1970s with the first of his dozens of solo albums, guitarist Cooder is a music industry stalwart and a prolific sideman. Cooder started early, acquiring an extensive appreciation of music and mastery of the guitar as a child, in part because he spent most of his childhood by himself, following a brutal accidental injury he suffered at the age of 4. He told Rolling Stone, "I stuck a knife in my left eye. I was playing with this toy car. I had it in one hand, the knife in the other, and the knife slipped. It was just a weird accident." Cooder's eye was so damaged that it couldn't be saved. He's used a glass eye ever since, but for decades, he didn't like to be photographed with it, admitting, "I was a little self-conscious, of course, but luckily, I did it at such an early age I was able to make adjustments physically." Kansas formed in the early 1970s and rode 2 of the era's musical waves to success, hard-charging arena rock and folky pop. For more than 50 years, both parts of the equation have been provided by guitarist Richard Williams, the only original member still in the band. During live shows, he wears glasses over an eye patch, a matter of function over style. In the summer before 8th grade, Williams had bought a bunch of fireworks in anticipation of the 4th of July, but he set them all off too early, so he went and bought another batch with an idea for something bigger. He told Guitar World, "I went down to my basement and dumped all the powder from the firecrackers into a glass medicine bottle with a porcelain top with the intention of making a bomb that would make more of a statement than simply blowing up a bunch of firecrackers." Williams tried to seal the top, but the friction started a fire that ignited the explosive materials in his hands. In the resulting blast, Williams detached an eye, and doctors weren't able to save it. He wore an artificial replacement for many years, saying, "I wore a prosthetic eye for a while, but I got rid of it because it wasn't very comfortable." The Barbarians are definitively a cult classic band. Formed in Provincetown, Massachusetts in the 1960s, the raw, rough and loud garage rock combo combined British invasion-style melodies with punk toughness and energy. The Barbarians had a couple of minor and regional rock radio hits in the mid-1960s, such as Are You a Boy or Are You a Girl? And Moulty Moulton, a song named after and relating the harrowing story of the band's drummer, Victor Moulty Moulton. Moulton played drums with just one biological hand. He reportedly lost his other one when, as a 14-year-old, he built a pipe bomb. The device misfired and led to the amputation of his hand, but he didn't let it stop him. Ever since, Moulton's lived and played drums with a hook-style artificial appendage. Jim Byrnes' journey to musical success began in the early 1970s. Drafted to fight in the Vietnam War in 1969, he hid out in Canada but was arrested and served 3 months in a military facility for desertion. Byrnes returned to Canada, singing and playing guitar for multiple acts in what at the time was a bustling blues circuit. He returned to the US for a 5-year stretch in the mid-70s, but his rise to stardom was interrupted by a devastating injury. In 1972, in Vancouver, Byrnes' truck broke down during a rainstorm. He was trying to push it off the road when he was struck by a passing motorist who'd lost control of their vehicle. Byrnes woke up in a hospital the following day. He told People, "This old Scottish doctor told me, 'You've been in a very serious accident. We had to amputate both your legs.'" Byrnes resumed his musical career in the Vancouver blues scene in 1977. Over the years, Byrnes has released 10 solo albums. He also branched out into acting, playing lifeguard on the late 80s CBS crime drama Wise Guy, and continuing on to this day.
How's retirement?
I don't recommend it.
Billy Joe Shaver started writing songs in his hometown of Corsicana, Texas, when he was 8 years old. He wanted to be a musician, but his family needed him to work in a local sawmill. Shaver learned to play the guitar while working shifts at the mill until he sustained a gruesome setback. His right hand got trapped in the machinery. Speaking to NPR's Morning Edition, Shaver recalled, "I had to put my feet against it and pull my fingers off to get out of it. It didn't hurt, partly because I shot a quick prayer up to God and said, 'If you let me out, I'll do what I'm supposed to do, play music and sing.'" After the accident, Shaver began to play more publicly, although he'd lost most of 2 fingers in the accident. As fate would have it, shortly after his 30th birthday, he was discovered at a performance by Waylon Jennings. Jennings' Honky Tonk Heroes album was comprised almost totally of Shaver's songs, and it's considered the first ever outlaw country LP. Bass guitarist Matthew Fleming made a name for himself in musical circles in his native Canada over nearly 2 decades. In 2014, he got his big break when Canadian indie rock singer-songwriter Tara Lightfoot hired him to play bass on her album Every Time My Mind Runs Wild. By June 2014, Fleming's work on the album was in the can, and he went for an MRI. For years, he'd been having pain in his foot that had manifested as a lump, but it was more than that. It was a tumor. Fleming had synovial sarcoma, a rare soft tissue form of cancer that develops in the limbs. Just a week later, surgeons amputated Fleming's foot to keep the disease from spreading. Afterward, he had chemotherapy to kill whatever cancer cells remained. Fleming told CBC News, "People ask me what was worse, the chemo or the amputation, and I honestly don't know." Fleming now walks with a cane and uses a prosthetic. But despite his ordeal, he was able to go on tour with Lightfoot, and his bass can be heard on 2 more Lightfoot albums. Before the 1940s, country and western music, as it was then known, wasn't terribly popular outside the South and Appalachia. But Californian Wesley Tuttle helped spread the genre around the U.S., recording albums and appearing on early TV shows, including Hometown Jamboree and Town Hall Party. He was also one of moviedom's many singing cowboys of the era, starring in a handful of Western musicals with Tex Ritter and providing the yodeling for some of the dwarfs in Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. In 1945, his song With Tears in My Eyes spent a month atop Billboard's country chart. Tuttle usually had his guitar with him, which he played with a prosthetic or the only 2 fingers on his left hand. At age 6, while working at his father's butcher shop, he got his left hand stuck inside a meat grinder, severing 3 middle fingers. But an undeterred Tuttle still figured out how to play the guitar. As a professional, Tuttle used a $300 prosthetic hand in publicity photos, but he stopped using it early on, saying, "I still have it, but my dog has chewed on it pretty bad." Born in Chile in the early 1950s, Andres Godoy came of age just when British invasion bands like the Rolling Stones and the Beatles were hitting the scene. Godoy formed a band called the Falcons at the age of 12. His goal was to be a professional rock musician. But when he was 14, the guitarist had a terrible workplace accident, which resulted in the complete loss of his right arm. The fact that he was at work at the age of 14 speaks volumes about Godoy's childhood, but he didn't give up. The guitar generally requires 2 hands to play well, but Godoy learned how to play again, using just his left arm.
What's interesting in my case is that the accident over time transformed into a blessing.
He developed a method of playing the acoustic guitar called tap. This involves rapidly picking out notes and chords with his one hand, plucking them simultaneously to get a loud enough sound. Godoy has since released multiple albums, taught guitar technique, and performed at numerous prestigious festivals. A proponent of sunny, party-loving bro country, as it's known, Jake Owen has been one of the most successful country music stars of the 21st century, but his life hasn't always been sunny. In 2013, Owen celebrated Independence Day weekend with 2 pro NASCAR competitors, Clint Boyer, and Kevin Harvick. The three were racing go-karts when Owen took a spill. He was wearing safety gloves, but his hand was severely injured. A few days later, Owen underwent very intricate surgery. He told CMT, "I have 40 stitches from the interior out. I shattered my fingers, the bones inside. The doctor said it was like taking a cinder block and dropping it on your hand, like it spider-webbed the bones inside my fingers." The surgery involved prying and resetting bones and then surgically inserting a screw to keep everything in place. 6 weeks later, Owen's finger got infected, and the doctors recommended immediate removal. Owen told WWGP, "They just went ahead and amputated the last half of it." Owen still went ahead and played a show later that day. Almost anybody can pick up a guitar and learn to play it. However, a handful of guitarists go on to form bands and make enduring art that brings them fame and fortune. But only a precious few of those musicians go on to inspire a thriving subculture, a la Jerry Garcia, the merry leader of the Grateful Dead, the original jam band, and object of near worship by its army of deadheads. Garcia and company trucked along on a seemingly endless tour for 30 years, from 1965 until Garcia's death from a host of medical problems. And to think he became one of the world's most acclaimed and well-known guitarists with only 9 fingers. When they were both kids, Garcia's older brother, Tiff, cut off Jerry's finger with an axe. Of course, it was accidental, kind of. Tiff related on the Garcia tribute DVD Move Me Brightly. He was putting little pieces of twigs on the sawhorse or whatever, and I was chopping them in half, making kindling. He'd put his finger there and take it away. That happened a dozen times. Finally, I just nailed him, so they had to remove it.
It was my fault because I did it. Well, but I wasn't thinking about the consequences. I was just playing the game he wanted me to play.
In the early 1970s, Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath pioneered heavy metal, combining a loud, dark, and grungy sound with wailing lyrics about war, death, mental illness, and other things contemporaries like Three Dog Night didn't care to cover. It's fitting then that one of the chief architects of metal, Black Sabbath guitarist Tommy Iommi, paid his bills before his music career took off by working in a sheet metal factory in the English industrial city of Birmingham. Iommi worked as a welder, but one day he was moved to a different part of the factory and put to work on a large guillotine-looking press. As Iommi explained to Loudwire, "I don't know what happened. I must have pushed my hand in. Bang! It came down. It just took the ends off. As I pulled my hand back, it sort of pulled them off. I was left with 2 stalks. The bone was sticking out of the top of the finger." Doctors cut off the bones and told Iommi that without a full hand of fingers, his guitar playing days were probably over, a fate he couldn't accept. So instead, he created prosthetic tips out of everything from melted plastic to cloth, finally deciding that cut up bits of a leather jacket gave him the leverage to grip down on guitar strings. In 1997, the humorous rap-rock group The Bloodhound Gang released the single "Why Is Everybody Always Picking on Me?" It included a shouted refrain that went, "The drummer from Def Leppard's only got one arm." So what's that about? Well, they're picking on Rick Allen, who was really left with one upper appendage after a New Year's Eve 1984 car accident.
It's just surreal. When I think back on that moment, it's almost like it didn't happen to me. It seems like it was some sort of made-up story.
While driving on the A57 motorway outside Def Leppard's hometown of Sheffield, England, Allen's Corvette Stingray slipped out of his control. It struck a brick wall at high speed, and the impact came at such tremendous force that it unbuckled Allen's seatbelt. As the car expelled Allen via the sunroof, his arm got caught on the seatbelt and detached from the rest of his body. Amazingly, Allen spent only a month in the hospital and resumed his duties behind the kit for Def Leppard in August 1986. He obviously couldn't play the drums the way he used to, so ever since, he's been assisted by a pedal-powered electronic drumming system. Buried under black and white face makeup that presented him to the world as the Star Child, Kiss singer and guitarist Paul Stanley played some of the loudest music in the world to arenas packed full of adoring fans in the 70s and beyond. Kiss concerts probably shattered more than a few eardrums, but long before he rocked and rolled all night and partied every day, Stanley began life with major hearing problems. Stanley told CNN that he was born with a level 3 microtia, a congenital deformity of the outer ear cartilage. The condition left the young Stanley virtually deaf on his right side, and it also gave him an undeveloped mound of flesh where his outer ear would have been. As an adult, Stanley corrected both issues. Along with receiving implanted hearing aids, a surgeon removed cartilage from the singer's rib cage and made an artificial ear out of it, which was then grafted to Stanley's head. Hip-hop artist Fetty Wap, real name Willie Maxwell II, broke out in a big way in 2015 with his chart-topping double-platinum self-titled debut album, along with 3 smash hit singles, Trap Queen, 679, and My Way. Fetty Wap rocks a unique appearance, which includes multiple tattoos on his face and neck, along with a left eye that doesn't look like most other people's. The reason? That eye socket is virtually empty. The rapper told TMZ, "I was born with glaucoma and I lost the eye at 6 months. I got reconstructive surgery when I was 12, and I just stopped wearing the prosthesis because I didn't want to look like everybody else." Meshuggah is among the loudest, heaviest, and most metal bands that ever metaled. The Swedish outfit has been a going concern for more than 30 years now, combining unique rhythms and jazz elements with some good old-fashioned thrash to create a distinctive, rumbling sound all its own. A lot of that auditory assault comes courtesy of founding member Fredrik Thordendal, named by Guitar World as one of the best heavy metal guitarists of all time. But in the early 90s, well after the band had established an international following, Thordendal suffered a setback. While working on a carpentry project, he sliced off the tip of the middle finger on his left hand. Doctors sewed it back on, leaving the damaged finger and index finger the same length. More importantly, he was able to play again. And this story is way more metal than anything Meshuggah ever recorded. Okay, well, almost. Les Paul isn't just the name of an extremely famous solid-body electric guitar favored by countless rock stars past and present. It's also the name of a man, the man who helped design that sweet axe for Gibson back in the early 1950s. Up to that point, Les Paul had been a successful jazz and pop guitarist and recording wizard. He even hit number 1 in 1945 with It's Been a Long, Long Time, a collaboration with Bing Crosby. His career was on the rise until it was cruelly interrupted by a 1948 automobile accident. His elbow was completely shattered, and surgeons couldn't properly rebuild it. Facing a future without playing guitar, his means of financial support and artistic fulfillment, Paul talked doctors into fusing what was left of his elbow at a 90-degree angle, the guitar-holding position. After he recovered, Paul married singer Mary Ford, and the duo racked up a slew of hits and starred in an NBC radio show together. Jim Croce absolutely ruled the music charts in the early 1970s. A folky pop singer in the vein of James Taylor or Neil Young, his rollicking story songs captivated audiences. His 1972 and 1973 albums, You Don't Mess Around with Jim and Life and Times, were smash hits and generated successful tunes like Time in a Bottle and Bad Bad Leroy Brown. That upward trajectory came to a tragic halt in September 1973, when the 30-year-old singer-songwriter died in a plane crash. Before Croce's life and career was cut short, he achieved success despite a major physical setback. According to a 1973 feature in Guitar Player, Croce played gigs at night and worked various jobs during the day. During one of those, he accidentally smashed his right index finger in a mishap involving a sledgehammer. Unable to use that very important finger in his guitar playing any longer, he developed a distinctive picking style that involved his other 3 fingers, as well as his thumb. In the summer of 1969, the hard rock band Mountain secured both its legacy and its baby boomer generational cred forever when it played a set at the Woodstock Festival. The group's biggest hit, the riffing cowbell-heavy Mississippi Queen, reached number 21 on the Billboard Hot 100 and endured as a classic rock radio staple and beer commercial background music. Founder, guitarist, and singer Leslie West kept playing music in various bands and as a solo act even after a personally devastating partial leg amputation in 2011. West spoke to Billboard in the aftermath of the surgery, which saw doctors remove the lower half of his right leg due to the ravages of diabetes. He told the outlet he was understandably shocked when he realized what had happened, saying, "I cried a couple of times. I looked down. Where is it?" West now gets around with the aid of wheelchairs and considers himself lucky. After all, he doesn't need a leg to play guitar. He told Billboard, "It's a good thing it wasn't one of my arms, then I'd really be." The late Dr. John, real name Malcolm John Rebenek, took the unique sound of New Orleans, put a pop rock spin on it, and brought it to the mainstream in the 60s and 70s. With a little bit of blues, a little bit of jazz, and a little bit of funk, the raspy-voiced Big Easy icon is perhaps most known for his 1973 top 10 hit, Right place, wrong time, notable for Dr. John's blazing keyboard work. He came relatively late to key-bass instruments after he'd established a career as a live and session musician, but he kind of had no choice. In a 1960 show in Jackson, Mississippi, Dr. John was playing his first main instrument, the guitar, with a band. A fight broke out, somebody pulled out a gun, the gun went off, and the bullet struck Dr. John in the ring finger of his left hand. It's amazing the force didn't blow the thing clean off, but Dr. John couldn't move it for so long that his guitar work suffered. And so, he switched to piano and keyboards and did pretty well for himself in the long run. Of all the rap rock bands that stormed the album charts and the TRL studios in the late 90s and early 2000s, Korn sat atop of the tattooed heap. Hardcore Korn fans couldn't get enough of the gravelly vocals of Jonathan Davis, the low-end grooves of bassist Reginald "Fieldy" Arvizu, and the intricate guitar work of James "Munky" Shaffer. According to Leah Furman's book, Korn, Life in the Pit, a teenage Shaffer actually started playing guitar in the first place as a form of physical therapy. But why did he need therapy, you ask? Well, one night, 14-year-old Munky tried to sneak out of his house to attend a keg party. As he attempted to ride away, the bike chain came loose and started making a loud, repetitive noise. Seeking to silence the bike as to not get caught by his parents, he grabbed hard at the chain. And that's when the chain and the teeth of the sprocket on the moving bicycle trapped young Munky's left index finger, mangling it horribly. While he initially had no feeling in the partially severed finger, doctors were able to save it and thought sensation would return faster if the teen played an instrument as therapy.
You need to rehabilitate your fingers somehow, like take up an instrument. I was like, how about guitar? I thought right away, I thought about that guitar being in a closet. So, oh, that's perfect.